Count Dooku, legendary fallen Jedi, turned Sith, the main villain of Attack of the Clones. Today we're going to be covering Count Dooku. So yeah, we're going to be painting him up. Now, just to cast my mind back, when I first got into Star Wars Legion and my buddy and I, Andrew, split a core box, I went with the Separatists and I immediately bought Count Dooku. I got to say, he was probably one of the most exciting units out of the whole range I was ready to get. So I actually painted this guy up a long time ago, let's be real. So now what I've done is I put him in the jar. I put him in the jar with some terps. We stripped out all of his paint, and now he's been reprimed and he's ready to go. We're going to give him a new paint job. So we're going to get right into it today. So no unboxing. We're going to get straight into painting legendary Count Dooku. Let's get into it. Now, as I mentioned before, this is technically a repaint. As we all get better with our painting careers, you may feel the urge to go back and touch up or completely redo some of your models, and let me just wholeheartedly say, go for it. It's cost effective and helps you get even more experience. Now, usually you don't need to completely strip the model either, just paint over the original paint. In terms of our first painting step after priming, I will be going over Dooku's body and arms with black Templar contrast paint, thinned with Lamia medium, to help the paint spread into all the crevices. I didn't worry too much about accidentally painting the belt, as we are going to go over that with some brown later on. However, make sure you get Dooku's neck with the black Templar contrast, as the neck of his shirt sits higher than his cape. Now that's drying, let's focus on the other large part of the model, and that would be Dooku's cape. I don't have any brown contrast paint, but if we mix Blood Reaver flesh with a heavy dose of Lamia medium, we can actually make our own contrast paint. Once I mix that up, I then spread the entire cape with our new concoction. Now, funnily enough, I used to use brush-on primer back when I first started out doing models, and it seems like it's actually caused some ugly scarring on the model, even though I stripped it with turpentine and a toothbrush over a few days. I would absolutely recommend using a spray can or airbrush when you prime your models. You don't want thick primer ruining any details you have on your precious models. It's looking like the cape will actually need a second go over, so while it dries, I paint Count Dooku's belt with Blood Reaver Flesh brown paint, watered down slightly. Now I go over the cape for a second time, making sure that we try and hide as much scarring as possible that I mentioned earlier. Now remember, doing sub-assembly painting, that a lot of these areas aren't actually going to be seen with the naked eye. So don't do too much detail in parts that are going to be obscured by the actual model. I'm mainly talking about the inside of Count Dooku's flowing cape. Mentioning that, we're going to go ahead and glue the cape and shoulders onto the torso. Due to the stripping process, Dooku was actually in three parts. The torso connected to the base, the cape connecting to the head and the left hand, and the right hand holding the lightsaber. Your model may look a bit different due to this, but feel free to glue and prime your model the same as me if you're following along or need help. Following this, I add a nice layer of lead belcher paint on Dooku's iconic curved lightsaber hilt. With this down, I added a layer of watered down Cadian flesh tone onto his hands and face. Not to worry too much about getting the paint on his beard and hair, we will deal with that later. The cape was looking nice and blocked in, but I feel like it needs more detail, so I added a little wash of Agrax Earth Shade over it. Now, I honestly love this stuff, so damn useful. I made sure that all the darker areas were inside the folds of the cape and not on the raised parts, wicking away any extra as needed. Let's shade these skin tones now to add some depth. Reikland Flesh Tone is a great wash that doesn't darken the skin tones too much, as Count Dooku has a light pasty complexion. Mixing 50-50 parts of Bugman's Glow and Blood River Flesh, I go over all the raised parts of the cape to add some grand sweeping highlights to the cape. I love this model's detail, and we are trying to preserve as much as we can with our painting. Now, although Count Dooku is skilled in removing his opponent's right arms, we will in fact be attaching his on now with some super glue to make for a quick bond. Next, we are using Corax white to dot the Count's eyes. Always take your time to make sure the eyes are roughly the same size. Once that's done, we can highlight the skin with Kivlev flesh on his hands and face, highlighting all the raised parts of the skin that would be receiving the shine from the Geonosis sun. I actually busted out a new very fine paintbrush to dot Count Dooku's eyes with black paint. This step gets easier with practice and time, so don't feel too disappointed if your faces aren't at the level you wanted. Using Administratum Grey now, I painted in Count Dooku's beard and hair, taking extra caution to not paint any of the skin tones that we have already painted on a previous step. Remember not to paint his bottom lip by accident. Count Dooku has a bright red villainous lightsaber, so let's give it a great red layer of paint. Evil Sun's scarlet really makes the saber pop, and then I made sure there was a nice white line on the blade. You don't have to do this, but personally, I think this looks great. Almost done now, I mix Bugman's Glow with Troll Slayer Orange Citadel paint and aim to make the ground he walks on be the nice orange of Geonosis. Small cameo of General Grievous in the background to make sure the colors actually matched. I gave the base 2 nice coats of black paint and realized I had one more detail to do for Count Dooku. His silver chain that keeps his cape together. And there we have it. Darth Tyrannus all painted up. I'm super happy with how he turned out, and honestly, this guy is always in my Separatist army, so it feels good to be able to give him a paint job he truly deserves. If you enjoyed watching this, please subscribe if you feel that I've earned it, and next up on the channel we have more Star Wars content in the pipeline. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.